Hello, everybody. Welcome to Mythical Creatures. Are you wondering what we're going to be doing today? Well, let me give you a hint. It has to do with this time of the year and little people, but it's not elves, but it has to do with Scandinavia and Norway and a tradition called Yule. So that's my hint. Come along with me and we'll check it out, okay? So if you guessed this little guy here called Nisse, you would be right. He comes from the area of Scandinavia and Norway, and he's a little pint-sized guy who dresses in farmer's clothes. He often has a little red hat, and he lives in the barns and in the under the floorboards, and he doesn't like to be around people. But he's quick to get angry, or he could be very helpful, but you don't want to be on his bad side. He could cause trouble to people if they laughed at him or if they didn't appreciate him. But he could be very helpful if you did appreciate him. Many people still try to keep the tradition of Nisse and the gnomes that live in Norway, and they like to keep that idea of them alive, and they tell stories about them, and we're going to talk about that just a little bit. They oftentimes, as I said, have these little knickers that they wear and little farmers kind of clothes, and they have these little red hats. I'm going to show you some other pictures of them. See, this guy, little guy, is wearing similar sorts of things. Um, you see that this says good jewel, and that's because there is a tradition that started from a book that was made around the 1800s that linked Nisse to the giving of gifts at Christmas time, and Christmas time is also called Jule. And so this idea grew in popularity and gave rise to the term Jultomenten. And Nisse was invited to live in homes, and he visited homes every Jule to check to see that they were being cared for. And he gave presents to children who had been good. So that's an interesting sort of tradition that comes around this time of year. But as stories would go, also, there was a lot of other stories that went around with Nisse. And some of them were, I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of those stories. He was thought of as being a protector of farms, and you had your own Nisse for your own farm. And oftentimes it was passed on that maybe the Nisse was actually the original link to the original owner of the farm, and maybe even was the spirit or of the original owner that was living there. And he could be a very powerful person if treated with respect. And in fact, if a farmer got very, very rich, it was thought that that was due to the help of the Nisse, and that he had helped them to get rich. And so he particularly liked animals and was often thought to be helping out in the farm and helping to take care of the animals, but he had a special fondness for horses. And so if you would wake up in the morning and go in and you would see that the horse's mane was all braided nicely, well, you would know that the Nisse had been there doing that. And you would never want to unbraid the tail or the mane of the horse, because that would make the Nisse angry, and it would bring in bad luck for your farm. So you would never want to do that. Also, another thing that the Nisse absolutely loved, shown in this picture right here, is they loved porridge. And porridge is any sort of cooked, it could be cooked oats like oatmeal, like we have, but it could be cooked corn or cooked rice. So that's what porridge is. And they love to have cooked porridge with maybe a dollop of sour cream, but certainly it had to have this butter on it, a pat of butter on it, about the size of, some people said, about the size of your eye, that much butter on top of it melted. And if it didn't have butter, they would be very, very angry. And so there's one story that's told, a myth that's told, that when the Nissa came, that one of the farmers said to his daughter, "Take the porridge out and put it in the barn for um, the Nissa, for our Nissa." And so she did, but she thought she'd play a trick on him. And so what she did was she took the bowl out, but she put the butter in first. So it was on the bottom of the bowl. And then she put the porridge on top. So you couldn't see that the butter was there, but you couldn't see it. And so when the Nissa got his porridge, he got furious and angry because he didn't think there was any butter in it. And so he went out to the barn and he took the farmer's favorite, biggest, best cow and he killed it. And then he got to the bottom of the porridge and, oh, he saw the butter was there. And then he felt terrible about that. And so he left a bunch of gold, as the story goes. He left a bunch of gold for the farmer. There's another version of the story that says he went to the next farm over and stole a cow from another farmer and brought it over. So I don't know. As there is in many myths, there's alternate versions depending on which country you're in. There can be a different ending to stories and different variations. So these little Nisse oftentimes are very kind of mischievous, and they definitely do have a hot temper. So that's that story about the porridge. Anyway, sometimes when people would come to the farm and find their bowls the next morning, they would see that the porridge was gone and they'd know that the Nissa had been there and had eaten it. So that was really proof to them that, yes, they had a Nisse. And so here's some different cute pictures of them by various different artists that I thought were really, really sweet. Now, some families, just like we have stories about related to Christmas that we hold to, they have this story about Nissa and Christmas time. And they also tell, now this Nissa is totally made up, but they carry on this tradition about telling about the Nissa and different various things that the Nissa does. And this one family tells the story about how their grandfather, and they just loved hearing the stories about their Nissa, and the grandfather would say that the Nissa was really there and living in their family and living in, but they never saw him. But he was responsible for doing different things in their family. And one of the things that he said was that he told them that he's always watching and reporting to Santa all year, whether or not they had been good or bad, so that they had better be good because Nissa was always there paying attention. And so that tied into the part about Nissa giving gifts at Jewel. And so they loved hearing those stories from their grandfather. And then he carried it even farther because he said, and the Nissa lives in our walls. So he can hear things. And he has one wall that's a candy wall. And so he will give candy from that wall. And then he would make it so there really would be candy that he had. And he had a way of, evidently, he had a way of getting candy out of a wall for them. So he went to great lengths to keep the Nissa story going. So, and I know of a family that is from Sweden, and they had sort of a Nissa thing where they would go Christmas shopping for a Christmas tree every year at a Christmas farm. And they would have a magical tune. A magical tree would appear they would have it singing, a singing Christmas tree. So they would, the tree would play music, the one that they wanted that would have the Nissa. So people have the Nissa tradition carried on in a variety of different ways. So it's interesting. Well, this week I have besides my talking to you about it, I have a link that I'm going to provide for you that will tell you about a way that you can make other little people, which are the gnomes. And there are two or three of them that I'm posting that I thought were particularly fun that you could do so that you can hang little ornaments if you hang ornaments on a Christmas tree, or just for fun, making funny little gnomes that you might just want to have around your house, because I think the gnomes are particularly cute looking little creatures. So I'm linking those too in our site, and you can have fun making those. And this is our last class before winter break. So I hope you have a wonderful winter break and enjoy. And I will see you in the new year. Okay, bye bye.